Thank you, everybody, for joining Cafecito Chats. Today, we have an awesome topic. We're going to be talking about retirement starts today. When should you actually begin investing? So, with that being said, we're going to tackle and provide our insights as why do so many people actually wait to start investing, right? We're going to explore to see if it's because they're living paycheck to paycheck or because they were never really taught or never really learned how to invest, be it in the 401k, be it in the stock market, be it in a Roth IRA, and they're a little fearful of where the money goes and having control of it, right? That might be something that could be an issue for a lot of us, a lot of people. Also, the power of starting early and or soon in your career. If you actually begin investing, is it too late at any given point? Or is it too early, too soon? So we're gonna give our experiences and our thoughts in how to begin investing in is it beneficial to start early versus a little bit later in your career life. Also, investing on any budget. A lot of us probably say, oh, I have a car payment, I have student payments, I have rent, I have food, I have, entertainment for myself, for my kids, etc., etc. But how do you actually create a budget to begin investing, and what type of budget and how does that really look like? And building a financial mindset, actually putting it in different buckets, enjoyment, bills and or life and vacation, and making sure that you have a bucket for actually investing in your financial retirement package. And that mindset, how does it begin and how do we get started on that? So that's the bulk of the conversation that we're going to be talking about. Retirement starts today. What do you do if you actually want to begin investing? So with that being said, we have Julio Lugo. Cesar, how are you, sir? Thank you for joining us. I'm going to piggyback on you because I talked to you a couple years ago and we talked about the 529 plan, investing and educational savings plan. But I want to get your perspective about retirement, and retirement starts now. As a matter of fact, retirement starts today. Having that mindset, when should you actually begin investing? Cesar?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. Name's Julio Cesar Lugo. I'm licensed, work for a company called Morgan Stanley. So make sure I'm clear, not providing any financial advice, but just happy to join this conversation. One thing, I found out I got some great advice when I joined the industry was from somebody that was a little bit older than me. He said, you want to start saving for retirement as soon as possible. That really stuck with me, and it allowed me to start saving once I got into the industry at the age of 21. So it's something that I had no plan on doing, but definitely was glad that I got that advice at that point, and was able to kind of share that same message with everybody that I worked with in the industry when they joined the industry. So was not planning to start at age 21 when I joined, but glad somebody was kind of there to, like we like to say in the Latino community, give a coscorron to kind of remind you, hey, this is important. You need to do this. So I think as soon as possible, as soon as you join your first professional job that offers a 401k, that offers a match, very important to start.
Awesome. Thank you, Julio Cesar. I'm gonna stay with you for one or two more questions. All right. So you mentioned 401k. You mentioned that you should start and get at least get that match from the corporation, right? But what if you're a student, young professional, you're thinking, oh man, I have student loans, I want to get that new car, and I really don't want any deductions on my check. I want to get it all. How do you go about changing that mindset, Julio?
I think it's important to realize where we are, and when I speak about where we are as a culture, American culture. One thing that we talk about within our firm, some of our thought leaders, is when we look at retirement, we're looking at longevity, we're looking at a lifespan, health span, and wealth span. So considering that most of us are living longer, it's something that we're all going to deal with at one point. We're all going to have to retire. How you want to live within retirement. We are seeing some changes that some of the younger generations, the Gen Z, are considering retirement a lot sooner, just from studies that our firm's conducted, other firms have conducted. But it's something that you really need to consider at an early stage. And 401k is not the only option available. There are other options to the younger generations in terms of saving for retirement, like an individual retirement account, savings account. There are other options they can begin with. They don't have to go with a 401k, but it's something that they should be considering again because of, and something that kind of coincides with that is this new longevity type of emphasis where everybody wants to live longer. Everybody knows we're living longer. We're all kind of trying to strive to live a healthier lifestyle. What you also have to consider is the wealth span of it, is how you want to live within retirement. So that financial aspect of what do I want to do within retirement, and do I have enough financial funds and resources to do that? So starting again as early as possible. And again, 401k may not be the only option, or it may not be an option if you're a small business owner. But as soon as you're able to start, regardless of what you begin to save with, there are going to be some tax advantages to the different accounts. But starting as soon as possible is still the recommendation.
Awesome. Thank you, Julio. And I'm going to go over to Mindy. Mindy Farrell, I'm assuming you're about my age, Gen X. So I want to piggyback off of what Julio was saying, just making sure that we acknowledge the different mindset. Stereotypically, there's a little bit of some traits between generation boomers, Generation X, millennials, Y, and the new Z generation, I guess. But from your perspective, Mindy, why do so many people actually wait to begin investing, right? And it might be cultural, it might be lack of information, it might be fear of losing your money based on what you heard from your parents, your family members. But then again, if you are living paycheck to paycheck, how do you actually generate a small budget to begin investing? And does it actually make a difference over time if you invest $10 versus not investing at all? So, Mindy, over to you.
Well, Lazaro, I am a solid millennial.
Okay.
I don't know if it's good or bad that I come off as Gen X. I have siblings who are solidly Gen X. They're 20 years older than me. And so I feel like I have a little bit of every generation. And I've really had the opportunity from my family dynamic. So my dad was silent generation. My mom was a boomer. My siblings are Gen X. I'm a millennial. I'm raising Gen Alpha. My nieces and nephews are Gen Z. So I've seen the full gamut on how people have approached it. And when I really look at my parents' approach, right, they were really hesitant to invest. They saw their parents lose money in markets. They remember the Great Depression. They might not have lived during all aspects of it, but they remember their parents struggling during that period of time. And so there's a lot of connotations to investments. And culturally, we tend to be a very conservative group of people. We are generally pretty risk averse in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to financials. A lot of times we're constantly thinking about our families. And one of the reasons why we might not be investing is we might not be putting our money towards ourselves. We feel like we need to give back to our parents. I don't know how many college students I have seen who they're working internships, working jobs during college, and they're sending that money back home to help care for their family. And so the way I like to think of it is, there's not enough life raft, you have to be on the life raft if you want to be able to help someone else. And so you have to start really, really early. I think Julio really hit the nail on the head there. You should probably be starting thinking about this almost in high school. That first job experience, you get automatically putting a set of money away that you can't touch, because everything, when you really learn about financials, is money compounds over time. Time is your best friend when it comes to investments, whether that's a 401k, investment properties, right? Time is what's going to work in your favor. And so the earlier you start, the more you can benefit from that. I will say I tend to be on the more risk averse side of things, right? So I can be a little hesitant when it comes to stock markets. I have some money in stock market portfolios, but I have money in investment properties. I have money in certificates of deposit that I might need access a little bit quicker than other things. So I utilize a lot of the different financial tools that are out there. And sometimes when you get in that living paycheck to paycheck mindset is really understand what your budget actually is. Can you afford that car payment? And basically treat your investment towards your retirement as this is a have to have, not a nice to have item. And you really have to change the mindset to do that. I think the further and further we put it off, I'm seeing this with my mother-in-law. She does not have a retirement savings. We are paying for her care because she is now in memory care. And so we are having to pay a lot of money because we have the savings and investments to do it, but she just never got around to it. It was never a priority. And I think it was afraid of, well, what's going to happen? Or I might just be able to work till I'm 80 years old. And it's like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. I have other millennials who've just accepted. Like, it's so funny hearing Gen Z's trying to plan for early retirement. A lot of my millennial friends are like, yep, we're going to have to work till the day we die. Like, we've almost taken the exact opposite approach of like, retirement's a nice idea. It's a nice concept. But finding the middle ground and setting money aside ahead of time and treating it as a necessity versus a nice to have item. That's a part of your budget. But it's changing that mindset. And whatever method that is for you, a certificate of deposit might not be the best way to do it, but if it makes sure you don't touch it, figure out what method is going to work for you. So you're like, oh, I see that money grow. I'm going to take it out and use it, because I know a lot of friends who invest in the stock market and then they pull it right back out and they're using that money for other items. And so whatever works for you, and there's so many different options out there, IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, utilizing 529s for your kids. Like, there is so many financial options to invest your funds based on what your style and preferences are. So utilize what works for you and make it a necessity.
Awesome. Thank you, Mindy. And I'm going to stick with you for one more question here. If we don't have all the information and we're a little bit hesitant, right, and we don't really know where to start, and a lot of us culturally are fearful about, one, talking openly about money to other people that are not our family members, right? And when I say talking about money, it's like explicitly saying, this is how much I earn, this is how much I spend. What would you suggest? And now we're getting into kind of like a gray area of, you should really go into a conversation with a CPA to make sure that you have an analysis done. But if you want to get started, and let's say, Mindy, I reach out to you because I know you and I say, hey, Mindy, what would you recommend I do? How would you recommend I start? Obviously, this is not financial advice for anybody listening, but this is just, conversation among friends and giving you my perspective of what I have, and you feeding back information of, this is what Mindy did and this is what has worked, and maybe I take that under consideration and possibly tackle it. So that's beginning the conversation, beginning to change the mindset. What would you say is the biggest hurdle for individuals to actually have that open type of conversation? Mindy?
I've started it myself of just putting that information out there, right? Because I know how it can benefit us, especially culturally in our families, our generations, to really take advantage as we go forward for future Hispanics of just start talking about it out loud, right? Get comfortable. Like, hey, I told my mother, I was like, I do very well financially. I make X amount of money. You don't have to do your planning, because she wanted to try to save a house for us. And I was like, no, we have it covered. And just being really open and honest about that. And asking friends, hey, what are you investing in? What are you looking at? Do you have a financial advisor? Here's some of the options I'm looking at. Or if they're not even to that step yet, hey, here's a couple of financial advisors I've used in the past. Some of them are at credit unions, some are with different groups. Start exploring what some of those options are, and then actually saying, here's the options. Like, I utilized the CD I did when I first got my job. I had been putting money away. I put it in a certificate of deposit. That's what I used for a down payment for an investment property, because it was out of sight, right? It's what I used at that point in time to be able to put those funds aside. And then I chose to put it in an investment property instead of the stock market. But I was making a choice, right? I was evaluating those choices and encourage people to look at those choices. Leo mentioned max out the 401k. Don't leave free money on the table from your employers. Take advantage of that. Some of them even have, if you're making student loan payments, they will match your student loan payment back into your retirement account. And so taking advantage of all the different options on the table and seeing what makes sense, but evaluating what the different options are and what you're comfortable with. Because sometimes going straight into the stock market, like, that can be intimidating. But there's lots of tools and partners to help you manage those funds, but letting them know there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of space, and try to give them some ideas of what might make sense for them, especially if they're first just getting started. Sometimes it might be just putting that separate savings account and splitting up your direct deposit, some into checking, some into a savings account. Like that might be a good intro step to learning how to separate your funds, and then just continuing to build that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mindy. Great insight, great perspective. I'm going to pivot over to Lourdes Sarmiento. Thank you for joining the conversation. Retirement starts today. When should you actually begin investing? I know that in previous conversations you mentioned that you're really looking forward to retirement soon rather than later. You're targeting, maybe 5-7 years to retire if at all, right? But I want to get your perspective. How do you actually begin, and what would you suggest people do to begin getting prepared for that retirement? Lourdes?
So I think in general, investments can trick people up because there's like a lot of jargon, right? It's like a
Mhm.
new jargon that you need to learn, but it's not that difficult. It's basics. You just have to take the time to either learn it or hire the people who can explain it to you and do the hard work for you. One of those would work. Um, Personally, I took the time to learn about it, and I also met with a few financial advisors to answer any of my questions and guide me a little bit. Um, but I like to know what I'm investing in. I do more investments on my side. Um, but that's a personal question. Like Minnie was saying, like compound interest is important, and I'm investing in like my own things right now. But yeah, I mean, everybody kind of has their own plan or their own way they want to go about it. But you should start either investing in the stock market or property or anything so you can generate that kind of financial stability for the future.
Awesome. Thank you. And you did touch on the compounded interest, right? So does starting early benefit you more than starting a little bit later? Is it too late at any given point to begin investing money wise? What are your thoughts on that, Lourdes?
I would say it matters. You want to do it as soon as possible because the longer time it has to work for you, the better it is, right? Just because the time on the market, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years makes a long difference versus 5 years, right? I would say invest as early as possible, but also be mindful of your budget, have your emergency fund on the side, have your other stuff kind of like um, safety nets in a way. Don't just throw all your money in the market. Like you have to have your emergency fund, you have to have your other stuff money on the side just in case you ever need it. You have a way to access it really quickly, like liquidity wise.
Yeah, yeah, you'd mentioned liquidity. So if you do, look at high yield savings account, that gives you a little bit higher percentage, but at the same time, you're able to access that money if an emergency happens or if you really need it right away. But for the most part, if you can put it away and really have different buckets where you don't really touch it and you just compound that interest, that helps a lot. We've been focusing on the financial aspect of things, right? But also retirement starts today. When should you start investing? I'm going to pivot here for a little bit about health and retirement. If you're not healthy, is expensive. And if you don't have that insurance or assurance that you're gonna be a healthy individual, why would you really want to retire if it's gonna be an expensive situation? So I'm gonna ask Alex Polo, how do we actually prevent or prepare for retirement in a health mindset?
Hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me. I think
Yep.
I'm gonna turn off my camera because I'm on the fishing boat right now. So I'm gonna make sure the signal's good. So give me a minute. Bear with me. Yeah. So very good topic as always, Lazaro. Yeah. Just to answer the initial question, is start as early as you can. That's always the number one rule because of the compound interest that people said. But as far as health, so yes, there is. We're all heading towards older age, and we all can't be guaranteed having good health all our lives. So, for example, there are things out there called long-term care insurance plans, right? So that is something that people use to protect themselves against, future health issues, uh, critical illness plans as well. That basically what happens is if you have an issue later in life where you can't, you can't do 2 of 6 daily activities that every human must be able to do, then that's when the insurance starts paying you. And the younger you are, of course, those plans are, cheaper. The older you are, those plans become, fairly expensive, and to the point where some companies might not even want to insure you if the to qualify for those plans, they have you do medical tests. You have to do blood tests, your test for cholesterol, high blood pressure, or whatever. They check all that. So again, the younger you are, the the you're not gonna really have those problems. Hopefully, not when you're young. So that's why insurance companies, offer lower cost plans at that age. So but don't wait on that either. Just my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Great insight. So as you see, Alex is investing in his retirement early. He's taking a fishing boat trip. So congratulations, Alex. We'll let you get back to that fishing trip. Jesse de la Trinidad, you have your experience in academia, right? So I'm gonna reach out to you and ask if you have any insight in regards to the academia retirement packages versus the industry where we predominantly work for most of us. Any insight as to what the difference of retirement package being offered in academia that might be a little different than what we see? Jesse?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, and I'm definitely not too familiar with industry, to be honest, because my whole professional life I've spent it in public higher education, and in California we're really blessed that at least the UC system provides a really great retirement and pension package. Though it's shifted. I've been with the UC for I think 7 or 8 years. And before my time, there was a totally different package that was offered that was a little bit more beneficial. So I kind of just barely missed the cutoff. But just depending on your years of service for the UC, your retirement looks very different. And so I can't really speak to the specifics because everybody's plans are different. But I will say that I do feel taken care of at the UC. And the great thing too is that because it's part of the state network, I can carry over that pension to different, like for example, the CSUs or the community college system. I believe if I transferred roles, then it would also carry over. So I would say it's a very like well connected retirement system that we have here, at least for the public sector.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jesse. You did mention a pension. A lot of companies outside of academia are doing away with pensions. If the listeners, the audience is hearing pension for the first time, pensions essentially the company takes care of you once you retire for as long as you live after you retire, right? But a lot of companies are doing away with those older pension plans and they're modifying the pension. So now there's a limitation of what they will actually cover. Sometimes there's a limitation of how many years they actually cover. So you might want to look into that if there's a company out there that is saying we have a pension. So look into the small print about what that pension really covers and how they actually do the distributions, disbursements of the funds and for how many years, depending on the service. There might be some clauses in there, so make sure you understand what that means. Also, if you leave the company, are you fully vested, not vested? That means that if you're going to get a partial or all of it, so make sure that you understand what that really means. And don't just assume, oh, if I work there for a year, I'm going to get a full-on pension. That's not necessarily true. Make sure that you understand all those little caveats of the pension that each each company has. That being said, moving over to Julio Cesar, you work in the finance aspect of things, right? What is the biggest surprise that people actually show or learn when they go talk to you about financial advice and retirement in general?
Yeah, and full disclosure, so I don't provide financial advice. I work in a different aspect of the firm here in terms of managing corporate relationships. So I don't provide financial advice, but in previous roles, that's part of what I used to do. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that specifically some of the immigrant community or sons of immigrants or children of immigrants is that there's going to be a pension, as you mentioned. I think Jesse might have mentioned this. There's going to be a certain amount of money that you're guaranteed at retirement, but nobody really discusses who or how this is going to be paid out. So part of that discussion and some part of those initial discussions with some of the clients that we had in the past was demystifying that portion is when you're discussing retirement, are you planning to save for your retirement? It's a yes or no. And if you are working for a company, are you contributing to, Social Security? Yes or no? The reason that for this is there's some people that work in, some people that own their own small business that may not be contributing to Social Security and may not know that they will not receive Social Security in the future. So some of those benefits that are offered through the government for retirement, they may not qualify for the future as well. So understanding whether they're saving in some type of qualified plan for retirement is an important question. Whether you're saving this, is there a match from your company through like a 401k, 403b? And if not, if you're a small business owner, are you saving any money for your own retirement? Because again, one of the biggest misconceptions is once I retire, especially from our Latino community, is I'm going to receive a pension and I'm going to be set for life. Unfortunately, that's not true. Unfortunately, it does take some additional work to understand whether you're saving for this or whether there's money that's being taken out of your payroll check for a certain benefit. So I think that part is one of the most important pieces for our community is to demystify that portion.
Right, right. Thank you, sir. So that's great insight, great perspective. I know that we're all fairly young in regards to looking at retirement, right? And that's why we're bringing this topic to the table, because it's never too early to actually begin thinking about retirement, and you actually have to have that mindset. And in order for that mindset to begin setting in, you actually have to start soon rather than later. But if, for example, and I'm going to stick with you, Julio Cesar, for a little bit here, if somebody actually didn't start investing and all of a sudden they start asking questions of themselves, it's like, okay, do I have enough to actually retire? What do I need to do? Is it too late? Is it ever too late, Julio, to begin investing?
No, I don't think it's ever too late. There's different resources, different calculators that are out there where you can begin to calculate how much, if you begin to save, a certain portion of your check a month, or if you do it biweekly, if you get paid biweekly, how much can I potentially have within, the next 10, 15 years or 5 years, depending on your time frame there. You can also look at calculators online that'll have an average rate of return on the investment. So you can calculate, if I receive this amount for my investment, how much can I potentially have? And they're going to be estimates. They're not going to be, 100% accurate, because whenever you're investing in the market, it's not guaranteed. Your investment will have potential for principal loss, but you can have an estimate of what you can potentially have within that time frame and have a better estimate or calculation rather than you just saving money or storing that money under the mattress, as we like to say. So there are resources. There's definitely quite a bit of resources that most financial institutions will offer, or even just by going through Google and searching those. I think it's important to at least explore those options first before kind of just throwing up your hands and saying, it's too late. I don't believe it's ever too late. There's something is definitely going to be better than nothing. I think it's just depending on everybody's situation. The situation is going to be different, but I don't believe it's ever too late.
One more question. I'm going to be devil's advocate here. You did mention putting money under your mattress, right? So some people actually put it in a coffee can. And if let's say you have about $10,000 to $20,000 in a coffee can, right? It's a hefty sum. What happens if somebody says, "Hey, I have this much money in my coffee can. What do I do with it? What are some of the possible repercussions of bringing that cash out and bringing it to light?" What happens? Any insight? Not necessarily financial advice, but just hypothetically, what happens?
I think it's important as I think some of the others on this call have recommended is discuss with a financial advisor, meet with somebody that, like you mentioned, a CPA or a CFA, CFP, discuss with somebody that has that knowledge that can discuss what your options are. If you feel that you need that advice, if you feel like you're a little bit more savvy, you have some financial literacy that you know how to invest your money. There are definitely programs out there. There's definitely products and services out there where you can self-manage your own investment through like a self-managed brokerage account. But definitely going through all the free resources that are out there. Most companies will offer lots of great financial literacy articles, webinars. There's so much out there that you can learn from once you've explored that option and you feel that you're ready to take that next step. Again, depending on what type of individual you are, if you feel that you're knowledgeable enough and can go without having that financial advice, you can take that step and take that next step. Or whether you feel that you need somebody to actually walk you through and gather that to walk you through the different investment vehicles that are out there, then schedule a meeting. You don't have to go with the first person that you meet with either. You can kind of go through a couple of different ones, different financial advisors, CPAs, to understand if that's going to be the right fit for you. But it's important to get started. So kind of just ensuring, I think the biggest point that we all want to get across is getting started is going to be important.
Thank you, Julio. That's awesome advice. Going over to Mindy Farrell. From your vast experience in investing, you did mention that you're pretty good with the money and it has, rendered retributions for you. What are some of the things that you would suggest? This is just a suggestion, providing your insight as to where people should actually begin putting money in, be it high yield savings account, be it a CD, investing in maybe one of those self-managed Robinhood accounts and or E-Trade or Ameritrade or any of those. What would you suggest would be some steps to strategically take for some of those individuals? Mindy?
The first step I took, you actually kind of hit it, that I didn't think about the first time, was we started with a high yield savings account. And I kind of got to a certain point, then I moved it to a CD. For me, I just had to know it was out of sight, out of mind. But very quickly started my own individual retirement account separate from my work accounts. And so for me, I didn't necessarily want fund. I wanted funds specific for retirement that would be long-term use that I wouldn't be able to access. And then I went into more stock market accounts. But I have a financial advisor who handles that. That was just too overwhelming for me, and I have a personality type, like I would get sucked into it and it would be too much. And so that's where I kind of mentioned just knowing what's going to work for you. But high yield savings account is a great first way to just get started and start putting funds away, and then kind of just building on that for what makes sense for you. If I were to go back, I would still have started with the high yield savings account. I probably wouldn't have done a CD just because the interest rates generally aren't fantastic on those. I probably would have went straight into more of a stock market approach, whether that was specific for retirement or just in general to be able to access. I used my CD as a stepping stone for the down payment for properties. So that was how I utilized it. In retrospect, I probably would have went more into stock market accounts and things along those lines a little bit earlier than I previously did. If I could take the time machine and go back, I would have started there. Started with the high yield savings account, kind of just got used to money going into a separate location because right early in our career, sometimes we don't have a lot of that emergency fund ready to go right out of the gates. And so I needed to at least be able to access those funds if I needed to. But the more and more that grew, the more flexibility I had to set that apart into different funds. And that's where I put an individual retirement account, but I had a separate fund for my first house, right? I had a separate fund for that. So figure out what works for you. Those big picture milestones, right? Cars are so much more expensive in today's world. Just can't believe how, so like you're going to I think the younger generations are really going to have to start planning for that almost the way we planned for houses, because those payments are just so much larger than what they used to be. So I feel like you have to almost start thinking about what car payments look like. Because even for a used car, it's going to run you like 20 grand for a decent car that's within like the last 10 years. In a house payment. So how do you strategically set up for some of those big things that are going to require more cash on hand? And being smart about how you do it. So I use my investment property. It was first my house. There's a lot of rules about getting a second property. But if you go for your second house, instead of selling your house, keep that house as your investment property. And then it's not going to count against you for your next payment. But really understanding the rules around that and which areas interest you. Like I said, I really like the idea of investment properties because worst case scenario, I have a place to go if something were to happen. I have properties to move into, or if family members get sick, I had a place to move them into. If my mother-in-law didn't need such care because of her health, we just would have moved her into one of our properties. That just wasn't available based on what her care needs were at the time. But it was important for me to have that flexibility. But I would have started investment accounts like stock market a lot earlier, I think, if I could go back in time.
Awesome.
And I don't touch them. I let someone else manage them.
No, for sure, for sure. And obviously, this is our own perspective, and this is what has worked for us. And this is not necessarily financial advice for anybody to follow exactly what we're doing and what we are saying, but this is to give you awareness of the things that we have done and what has worked for us in the past to get us to where we're at right now. High yield savings account, Anna Marie, shifting over to you. Are you aware of high yield savings account? Can you actually explain a little bit how they work? What are the differences between maybe a CD and a high yield savings account versus a normal savings account or checking account?
Yes, I have a high yield savings, but I would say that I'm hurting a little bit in the financial literacy. Like it took me longer probably than it should have. I've had a high yield savings for about 5 years now, and it's a tiered return. So if you have a higher amount, then you get closer to the 5% return. Whereas prior to that, I had a regular savings account and the return was a stagnant like 0.01 return, so like 2 cents for the amount that I had in there. And when I was researching certificates of deposit, I think to Mindy's point and to Lourdes's point, the liquidity of it was very important for emergency fund purposes or whatnot. And I think in a certificate of deposit, you have to make sure that you do not touch that amount for a set period of time, whether it be like 6 months, a year, and so on. And so that was a little bit of a drawback for my financial standing because I still have student loans and a car payment and other budgeting constraints. But I think a CD, I did use a CD early on in my teens when I first started working to learn about how interest compounds and how really long it takes for you to get a return on your investment and how much you need excess into beyond what your budget is to be able to get any type of return on that. And so I think the CD was kind of my first step. And then I went to high yield savings and then Roth IRA. And I have a state pension. I think perhaps the same one as, what's his name? Jesse.
Jesse the Latinidad, right?
Because I'm in CalPERS too now. and there is reciprocity between the county system and the state system. But I think we were talking earlier, there's no reciprocity with the federal. And so that will be something that if I switch employment, I have to consider investment for that return as well and the pension security.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Great insight, great perspective. So, um, right now, Mindy also mentioned buying a house, buying a car, preparing for that. So, let's get into a little bit of that conversation here. Uh, I'm gonna stick with you, Anne Marie, for a little bit because you're starting off your career. You're a young professional now. How do you view, from your perspective, from your point of view experience, how do you view possibly getting into owning property? Is that even possible? Is that a daunting task? How do you see that at the moment? Over to you, Anne Marie.
I'm about 5, maybe 7 years into professional experience, and I just completed a master's degree. So I do have a pretty substantial amount of student debt for that, 40,000. But yeah, owning a house with a car debt and student debt seems almost impossible.
Mhm.
And that could be because of my lack of understanding in what my options are. But I think the biggest hurdle is, accruing enough while also maintaining all the other long-term investments and having enough for a down payment. And that's kind of the biggest hurdle, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the reality of things at the moment that we're seeing with the younger generation. Shifting over back to you, Mindy, you did mention that the younger generation, or at least the millennial generation, saying, "Hey, I will work until I die," for exactly what Anna Marie was saying, right? You want to buy a house, but you can't because you have student loans, but you can't really knock down the student loans because you also have to live, you have bills to pay, et cetera, et cetera. So, Mindy, suggestions on possibly working towards that, purchasing a house, saving enough for the down payment, any insight or tips that you might share for those individuals? Mindy?
Especially when I personally find a house to be a really good investment, and this is Mindy's personal
Right.
opinion. But I find that a really strong investment in just really understanding what that means. There's so many programs, especially for first-time home buyers. There's just so many things you don't realize until you start understanding. Like most people didn't realize, they thought, oh, I'm gonna have to carry 2 mortgages. Well, it's like, no, you're gonna rent it out, and they don't think they're gonna get that second house they want. Because they're like, I'm supposed to move on from the starter home, right, into like a nicer home. And it's like you still can, because you're going to count that even potential rental income of that first property, that first house you bought, into that second property. And so it actually doesn't decrease your buying power. So that's usually why I see people choose to sell their house to get their next house. But getting that first house in the first place, look at all the programs that are available for first-time home buyers. A lot of them have really down payments. A lot of times that's going to mean you have a much higher I forget what the PMI stands for. But the lower the down payment, they're basically putting an insurance cap on you to make sure things are gonna work out the way they expect.
Yeah.
Which is called PMI. I can't remember what the acronym is.
Principal mortgage insurance.
Yep, there we go. Principal mortgage insurance. And so also learning that you can refinance that home and get rid of that principal mortgage insurance, right? Especially if someone bought like pre-2020, if they bought like in 2018, they could have refinanced in 2 years and got rid of it because the equity in their house increased so much. But knowing that you can refinance, paying attention to what that terminology means, you're not locked into a rate forever. There's lots of flexibility. You can borrow against your house. Like if you need to do a remodel, you can borrow. Just know what the option space is, and just making sure you're making the right decision to what makes sense for your financial situation. And ask yourself, what are my financial goals? When do I want to retire? What does I want my retirement to look like? Do I want to be traveling a lot during that time? What happens if, I have a partner? What happens if they get a medical condition and can't work? What if one of the options for my husband, the only way I've kept my husband working the past couple of years is his money is the fun, go have fun vacation money. And that keeps him incentivized to keep working. I was like, hey, yeah, like if we budget like you want to be go on those more extravagant vacations, like I'm firm on the budget. And he's like, fine, I guess I'm just going to keep working.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But, right. Setting what do those financial goals mean for us? We've chose to put off doing a remodel because we have enough space in our house. We have a casita for my dad. Even though we'd like to upgrade it, is it something we really need or want? Because I treat it as an investment personally more than I treat it as like my home. And that's maybe a different concept for a lot of people. Because I ask myself, if I put $50,000 into this house, what am I going to get out of it? What's my return on investment for that? And starting to ask yourself when you're putting money in places, hey, if I'm going to keep putting this money, it's going to be a down payment for a house. My return on investment is I have the house, right? It gives me options. And asking yourself, does that make sense? Do I really want the brand new car that costs $70,000? Or can I settle for something in the $20,000 to $30,000 range for a shorter period of time while I get the savings in place to handle juggling all the different expenses that come into place? And just really trying to understand what that is. But get that, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, there's a lot of apps now. I still default to a spreadsheet just because that was the technology I had at the time, so I'm comfortable with it. But there's so many apps out there to help you understand and budget and then set your goals based on that. And those goals can be different for everyone. Someone might be like, nah, I really don't want to deal with the idea of potentially managing properties. Like, that sounds awful to me. Then look more at those stock market accounts and things like that.
Thank you, Mindy. Great insight, great perspective. So we're going to go around the room. Jesse de la Trinidad, any final thoughts, comments, and or questions that you might have? Jesse?
I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to say kudos to everybody on this call because it's been super informational. So I'm really glad I joined. Thank you, Laceta, for hosting it.
For sure. Thank you, Jesse, for joining us. Lourdes, Sarmiento, any final thoughts, insights?
No, just thank you for holding the space for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Alex, any final thoughts, insights?
Yeah, so one thing that I wanted to also say is just because your friend did something and or a family member and it worked for them and they're doing great, don't do the same. I mean, everyone's situation is different. You should talk to a financial advisor whenever you can. Get started on financial literacy if you think you're lacking financial literacy. Because yeah, the financial industry is full of different types of solutions and products. It's so varied that no matter what your goals are, your situation are, there's something for you to get started. And it's so overwhelming that you got to talk to someone that's in the industry and knows it and can help you with that. The other thing I wanted to say is also make sure when you're investing your money that you are beating two things, that you are beating inflation and taxes, because otherwise if you're not beating inflation or taxes, you're even though your money is growing, it's still losing value over time. So we all know, inflation is about like 3% a year, right, on average, and then taxes is about 25% of whatever you gain. So just keep that in mind and make sure you're beating both of those. Having the money in a jar or under the mattress, that's not the best because just inflation will kill that money over time. It'll lose value. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, sir. Great insight. Enjoy your fishing trip there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Marie, any final thoughts, insights?
Just thank you, everybody. I took copious notes, and I'm gonna look into the suggestions from Mindy.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne Marie. To close it out, we focus heavily on the financial aspect of things, but I also want to highlight that retirement doesn't just happen when you have enough money. It happens when you actually have good health, right? And if you want to retire early, well, yes, you need financial stability, but you also need health. If you can't walk, if you can't move, if you can't take care of yourself, then why are you retiring early if that's a situation that you're in? So my advice, my recommendation is also invest in your health. Go out for a walk during lunchtime, go out for a run, Do physical exercise, physical activity, go on a bike ride, lift weights every now and then. You don't have to overdo it. You have to do things that you are capable of doing, but do them consistently. And that's also part of retirement investment, investing on yourself, investing on your health. Mental health also comes to mind, right? Don't stress over a job that's killing you slowly and you're trying to focus on the financial aspect of keeping enough money. But at the end of the day, that money might come at a cost if it's actually keeping you in a situation where you're overworking, you're overstressing, it's creating a toll on yourself. So make sure that you follow that, make sure that you do the full scope of things and that you keep that in your mindset as well, not just the financial aspect. Obviously, everybody focuses on that, but health-wise, you also have to focus on that. That's my perspective. Thank you everybody for joining. Next week we also have a follow-on series about special and mindful habits of how to manage your money. So be prepared for that. We'll be talking about money for the next couple of weeks. So with that, thank you. We'll see you next time. Hasta luego. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.